Good afternoon. I'm presenting on loot boxes in video games and the Gambling Act of 2005. Loot boxes are quasi-gambling monetization mechanics in video games. They are structurally and psychologically similar to gambling because players buy each loot box with a set amount of money, but the prize they obtain is randomized. Most of the time, the prize is worth very little, but rarely the prize is very valuable. Empirical research has established that players who buy a lot of loot boxes tend to have higher problem gambling severity. We don't know why this relationship exists yet, but the precautionary principle of public health arguably applies here. The lack of scientific evidence cannot justify regulatory inactivity because of the high level of risks and potential harms involved. More than $30 billion is estimated to be spent annually on loot boxes worldwide. 23% of 11 to 16-year-olds in the UK reported spending money on loot boxes. Loot boxes are quasi-gambling because most loot boxes do not fall under the Gambling Act of 2005. This is because the prizes of most loot boxes cannot be transferred to other players and sold for real-world money, meaning that the prizes of these loot boxes are not money or money's worth. These are known as embedded isolated loot boxes and are highlighted in orange on the table. Most players likely do not purchase loot boxes in order to make a monetary profit. Consumers are being harmed by such loot boxes whose prices cannot be sold for real-world money. Two parliamentary committees recently recommended regulating such loot boxes. The Department for DCMS called for evidence on loot boxes late last year. The government is currently reviewing the Gambling Act of 2005. With regulatory attention already being paid to loot boxes, why does the Law Commission need to examine this issue? This area raises novel legal questions as to the regulation of video game design. The UK government is likely to prefer an extension of gambling law to regulate loot boxes, as recommended by both parliamentary committees. However, this approach will likely over-regulate the area and will not be capable of ensuring consumer protection from other newer methods of predatory video game monetization that do not involve randomization. Such mechanics have already been invented to replace loot boxes in some games. A loot box ban has effectively happened in Belgium, but this has caused certain games to be removed from the Belgian market because it is no longer commercially viable to operate those games there. Players can no longer play those games and the company's commercial interests have been affected. Is this what we want for the UK? There are other options. China has adopted a consumer protection approach. Companies are required to publish the exact probabilities of obtaining potential prizes. The attempt to regulate loot boxes has also revealed inadequacies in UK gambling regulation. Firstly, paid loot boxes, whose prizes can be sold for real-world money, constitute gambling under UK law. The Gambling Commission agrees. However, there are existing games that implement such illegal loot boxes, but to our knowledge, the Gambling Commission has not enforced the law. This is in contrast to the Netherlands, where a company implementing these illegal loot boxes was prosecuted. This regulatory inaction in the UK reveals that the Gambling Commission is not adequately equipped to understand the intricacies of video game design. Gambling is being regulated with a specialized regulator. Should not the video game industry be similarly regulated with a new specialized regulator that understands the industry and its products? Secondly, the future-proofing of the Gambling Act of 2005 does not work. The definition of gaming under Section 6 contains two legal elements. Firstly, a game of chance, and secondly, a prize. A prize is defined as money or money's worth. The near ability of the Act to regulate most loot boxes is because the prize element cannot be satisfied. The game of chance element is plainly satisfied. Section 6.6 provides for executive powers to make regulations to treat an activity as a game of chance. However, there is no analogous deeming provision for the prize element. Loot box prizes that are not money or money's worth cannot presently be deemed to be prizes for the purposes of the Act. Therefore, the Gambling Industry Committee's recommendation that executive regulations be made to immediately regulate loot boxes under Section 6.6 is not legally possible. The Gambling Act of 2005 and the Gambling Commission cannot promptly address novel inventions, such as loot boxes and gambling using cryptocurrencies. Reform is required to protect children and adult consumers alike. Thank you very much for listening.